And the best quality is we discover that vulnerability is actually a doorway into a power of resilience that is far more powerful than the thickest wall of pride. And we're living in a world where the world is breaking down any pride wall that exists so we can all remember the power of our vulnerability and live in a world where we can start living and breathing together.
Welcome, everyone, to what's going to be a very powerful and beautiful episode of Untapped. And my name is Todd Jason, and as always, I'm sitting here with my wonderful, amazing co-host, Lauren Weinstein, and we're really excited to have Matt Kahn with us here today. And I've been anticipating this conversation with Matt for some time because the purpose of us starting Untapped and having these conversations is to help us uncover, or maybe even discover, unique and powerful ways for each one of us to untap more potential, more joy, more flow, and more abundance in our lives and our work. And sometimes we bring in people who have a very direct, tactical way or practice to improve our experience via a specific skill or mindset shift. But today, the topic is self-love, a term that all of us can probably intuit is important, but maybe not something we look at as a practice or as a daily quality we can learn about and improve. So our goal with this conversation is to probe Matt about self-love. And our intention is that you find some juicy nuggets that you can take with today, tomorrow, and maybe even forever that will help you untap more potential. And we really could not have a better guest or a guide on this topic than Matt Kahn. He's a world-renowned spiritual teacher, a highly attuned, empathic healer. He's a powerful speaker. He travels around the globe doing keynotes, and he's a captivating best-selling author as well. He's got a bunch of books out there, and I know his work very well. And with that, I want to stop there and just welcome you into the conversation, Matt. It's a real honor for you to be with you today.
Well, thanks for having me, both of you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so privileged to be a part of this conversation today.
Thank you. Yeah, such a gift. I followed your work for quite some time now, a few years. I've read your books, listened to some of your recordings. And so it's such a treat to have you.
Thank you.
First, so the topic is self-love. And I found so much of our ability to work with something is our ability to really understand it, what it is and why it matters. And it goes beyond knowledge to really embody it. So I'm curious, what is a helpful way for us to see self-love, for us to define it? And then why would you say why it matters? What is the difference it makes?
I love that. I love that question so much. I think that if we talked about self-love different than we would think of romantic love, or we think of self-love primarily is how we begin to establish a sense of safety within ourselves. Oftentimes we have a past where we've endured and survived trauma. We have experiences where we can't help but maybe anticipate that the past is going to repeat, or hoping to stack the deck in our lives where I need good things to happen so that I can feel further away from the disappointment and the loss that I've experienced in the past. And so, for so many reasons, we as human beings, especially because what happens to a human being outside of us is equally felt inside of us, a lot of us lack a conscious sense of safety. Whether it's if you said to someone, do you feel safe? Their awareness is always going to go to the places where they don't feel safe. Or there's always a sense that at a certain point of our lives, we realize things are never quite the way I need them to be. And even if it is, now I'm afraid of that changing or being taken away from me. So I think inherently, the first thing that self-love does, and a lot of times if we think of self-love, it becomes kind of a loaded phrase because we immediately or even subconsciously go to the people in our lives who said they loved us, but then neglected, or the people that said they loved us, but then did unloving things. So it's a very untrusting phrase, self-love, and so if we think of self-love as a means of creating safety, and the reason I say safety is because when you feel safe in yourself, and the real definition I would give to safety is, can I find wholeness in myself without defining my value by outside experiences? That's the real definition of safety, that the outside world can change, that people can be in good or bad moods, and it doesn't jostle my sense of self. That's safety. And when we're safe, we have greater awareness. And when you have greater awareness, you have greater access to the depth, the infinite depth of intuition, of clarity, of inspiration always within you. So if I tied this all together, safety expands your awareness to give you greater access to infinite depth within you. When you lack safety, you don't have a lot of awareness. And when you don't have a lot of awareness, you have depth, but don't know how to access it. And the first letters of this is sad. So the reason why we're sad is because we're not safe to have the awareness to access the depth. And it's actually self-love that reverses the spell of sadness, because the difference between happiness and sadness is the percentage of infinite depth inside of you that you have access to. When you have less than 50% access to your infinite depth, you're on the trajectory of sadness. That will restrict your awareness and that will cause you to feel unsafe and give your power away to people and outside situations. When you have more than 50% access to your infinite depth, you're on this spectrum of happiness. And so, in a nutshell, self love is what helps us to heal the patterns of sadness and to learn that our happiness is not rooted in people, places, and things, but how much access I have to the infinite depth within.
Oh, I should say so beautiful. I recommend our listeners and listen to that over and over again. I know I will. Like it's a lot to really take in because
Yeah.
it's so such truth.
Yeah.
And I feel that from my own experience. The more that I've felt safe from within, regardless of what's happened externally, the more joy I've experienced, the more intuition that I have, the more that I allow in. So much of the journey of life is just feeling safe and whole within, regardless of circumstance, so that we can experience life and do more and feel more and then impact others in the way that
Absolutely.
we do.
What comes up when you share this is I get the beauty, and I was also feeling tension in my body that probably comes up as anxiety or stress or the things that I need to do. And I'm not new to this journey either. I've worked with
Right.
you closely, but I still feel the stress or the things that we need to do or the anxiety. And my imagination is telling me that the path that you just laid out is a process for dissolving some of this, the stress and anxiety. But walk us through, as a healer and somebody that really coaches people in this in large groups and also individually, how do you help us walk through this process a little bit more from being in this state of concern, anxiety that is just so ingrained in our day-to-day experience, and really start, what's the first step? Like, how do we start this process to really embody and ingrain this process with us?
It's a great question. And as we go through this, we're going to take steps to exploring self love. So not only as I'm talking about it, I'm providing an experience of it, but let's say the first step of self love. And if I gave a really technical answer, and I think sometimes technical answers are helpful because it tends to give us space from some of the emotionality that we are consumed by. But if we look at any time you are stressed, you are anxious, or you're in a state of fear, whether you're in fight, flight, freeze, or what we call fawn, the one thing we become aware of is when I'm in these states, I am the most disconnected from my breath. So let's say we are feeling a sense of fear or anxiousness, as you were saying, Todd. The first thing we would do is first ask ourselves, not why am I feeling this? Because then we're trying to use our mind to heal something that really is of the heart. But we ask ourselves, where in my body do I feel this? So for all of us on the call, if we were just to find any tension in your body and just go or ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body? Is it the center of my chest? Is it my gut? Even if it's your whole body, that can be the locations. The first thing you want to do is you want to locate tension. And then once we locate tension, that becomes the place we guide our breath into. Because love is emotional nourishment, and there's no greater nourishment we have access to than that. And so we begin breathing into the area where we feel the tension, as if the breath itself is the care package delivering to that tension. all the life force energy it requires to go from tense to open. So the first step of love is when I locate tension in my body and I acknowledge that this is where breath needs to go. Because when I'm in tension, I'm the most disconnected from my breath. So love is like saying to the tension, like a parent would say to a child, I see you're in duress. I see what you need that you haven't put in, and I'm going to deliver it to you. And so, like a beautiful parent holding a child, the breath delivers nourishment to where the tension is. And I think the fundamental mistake or the mix up is we always want to figure out the reason for the tension. And while we're overthinking what the tension is related to, we're still not breathing. So the first thing we have to do is breathe into where the tension is, which then will allow the intelligence and the awareness to arise on its own. So if we did that together, if you just start by locating in your body where there is tension, where there is unease, whatever it's related to, insecurity, doubt, fear, even if it's the place in you where there's an I don't know, that's the right answer. And can we breathe and guide the breath into that part of the body to say, I don't have to think this through. I can breathe this through. I don't have to think this through. I can breathe this through. And as we start to just slow and deepen our breath, we're actually recruiting a larger percentage of our depth because we'd want the smartest part of ourselves to be able to do the thinking when it's time to do it. So the first step of self-love before we get into the emotional component of it is just, can I breathe into the part of my body where tension is begging for more attention, nourishment, and care? And just the breath itself is like a parent holding a child, offering ourselves the very first instance of inner renewal and self connection, where it is one of the most loving things you can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to touch upon any of the stickiness of however we associate it to be. So, love is I'm aware of what I need, I'm aware of where that part is in with me. And instead of overthinking what it's about and what I need to do, can I just breathe into it and give myself a moment of space?
No, think of it as clarity comes from calm, right?
Yes.
When we're in that state of calm and nourishment, the clarity has literally space to rise up beyond the choppy waters. It's in stillness that insight comes through. Well, yeah, I'm curious. So you touched a lot around it. It seems related to self compassion, which we hear a lot about. I'm wondering if you could touch a little about how the two connect with one another and the difference self compassion makes.
Well, what's interesting is that self compassion is such a powerful force. And there oftentimes are these processes that kind of say, here are the steps you take to access self compassion. I first must accept. But when you're breathing into a part of your body, you're already in a state of acceptance because you're aware of where the breath needs to go. Compassion really is I'm here to support myself versus judge myself. Just as compassion means, may I support someone through their journey rather than judge them for the pain I may not know they're in. So self compassion is actually where we become helpful to the helpless parts of ourselves. And for example, in my first book, Whatever Rises, Love That, the process is we put our hands on our heart and we say to ourselves the words we didn't hear enough of when we were growing up. Could be, I love you. Could be, I see you. It could be, you're safe. Maybe it's, I like you. Right? When I was a kid, I didn't care about love. I just care about being liked. And so all of us have a phrase of self compassion. And so maybe the second step as we're creating this organically, we go along, maybe is creating our own statement of self compassion. That what would the sentence be that you would want someone to say to you that would make you feel seen, acknowledged, and supported. And then we put the two steps together. And as you're breathing into that part of your body, you can say that. You can say it to that part. So if I were feeling tension in my stomach, I would locate it. I would breathe into it. And I would ask myself, Matt, what would you want to hear from someone in your life right now that would make you feel so held, so seen, and so acknowledged? What would be your statement of self-compassion? And probably for me, it would be, I'm here with you. And so I would breathe into my stomach and say, Matt, I'm here with you. And then I would take another breath and I would say, Matt, I'm here with you. And I would try this about 5 times. And I think all of us, as we try this together, you'll notice a difference between the function of how your nervous system felt and how it will feel. Because the nervous system is like this inner barometer that helps you know when your calm has gone out of sync with your depth. And so if we tried this right now, and each of us on the call or those who are listening, what would be the statement of self-compassion? What would be the words, whether it's from your partner, whether it's from the most beloved family member who may no longer be with us on the planet? Maybe it's the opposite words that you heard growing up. Maybe it's the words you're hoping someone will say to you. Maybe it's the words that you say to people when they need you. What are the words you can say, just one sentence, make you feel so treasured, seen, and valued? So if we take a moment and come up with that, and then as we breathe into the part of the body that we talked about a step ago, we breathe in and we silently say to that part, that sentence, here with you. So just to make it interactive, Todd, what would that sentence be for you?
Yeah, I was got emotional as you were sharing it because what came up for me was my mother who passed about 4 years ago.
Yes.
And it was, I love you and I think you're amazing.
I love you. You know what would be amazing is that we do this. In honor of Todd's mom, we should all say this to our own hearts,
Mm.
self-compassion. And so we breathe in and we say to ourselves, I love you. You are amazing.
Mhm.
I love you and you are amazing. I love you and you are amazing. Now, if as we say this, by the way, and you feel a little tension or apprehension, that's just a part of us that has been unsafe for so long. It's just making sure this is okay. This is different. This is foreign. Not used to this. Used to being guarded. So just so you know, it's totally natural. And if there's also a part that's feeling really good and relaxed, that's also showing us that there is a part of you ready and needing self-love for the fuel that lets us access our infinite depth. So, Lord, if I asked you the same question just to make this so interactive, what would that sentence be for you?
I think I felt I'm physically abandoned by my father, and then my mother felt so there emotionally, but could disconnect. And so I think I'm not going anywhere.
That would be the sentence you'd want to hear.
Yeah, I'm not, like I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm going to stay.
I love that. I love that. I love how specific that is. I love that. So, in honor of Lauren, because we are all healing individually, we're all healing together because we're all connected. So, we say to our hearts, we breathe in and we say, I'm not going anywhere. Is that the sentence?
Yes.
I'm not going anywhere. And we breathe in and try it again. I'm not going anywhere. Maybe one more time. Breathe in. I'm not going. And just feel how the power of words, every letter is a different frequency of energy. And so words carry such power. And in all the different ways we're saying this are just different ways to show ourselves self-compassion.
Mm.
And it's one thing to say self-compassion is the absence of judgment. But just because a parent doesn't judge their child doesn't mean their child spends time engaging with the parent. So it's not just the absence of judgment we shouldn't do. It's what are the things we are craving to do. And what we're craving, and sometimes we live behind a wall of pride where we don't know what we need. Deep down, what we need is to hear, I'm here with you. I love you. I'm not going anywhere. I think sometimes in this world, we try to be bigger than we try to be bigger than the age we were when people took advantage of us. And while we're trying to be bigger than the past, we're not meeting the moment from a place of self-compassion. This is not about being bigger than you. This is not about, I'm going to make sure no one has the power to get me. This is where we say, I honor my vulnerability and how sensitive I am because it's a tool that shows me where to deliver self-compassion. Begins with my breath to the part of my body that is tense. And then I say the words that I've always wanted to hear. And what's amazing about the mirror neurons in the brain is when you say those words to yourself, your brain doesn't know the difference between you speaking to you and someone else saying those words to you. So your body and your nervous system and your cells are responding as if someone just showed you a moment of compassion. Someone just miraculously did something that touched your heart. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a perfect stranger showing you grace and you being the one that touches your life in the way you've always wanted to be touched. And so it's a very powerful process.
Mhm. Let me ask you, Matt, because I'm really moved by the way that you shared about the breath. So yoga traditions, of course, is all about using the breath to heal the body, meditation practices, Vipassana, Buddhist. This has been around, but I've really never heard it quite explained the way that you did, which is looking at the breath, getting the moment of self-awareness of tension in the body, and then using the breath intentionally to come in and heal that part. And what I love about it, it's very physical, that the tension that we have, the anxiety that I mentioned before is physical. And a lot of us think it's just mental, but it's actually living in the body somewhere. And the breath is a tool that we always have access to, that we can use it with intention to heal that part. And then adding in the second piece of now we can speak words.
Mm.
Really, I got emotional when you got to me. I was almost in tears. I'm glad that Lauren asked you the next question because I almost had tears streaming down my face thinking about my mom. But it was a very powerful moment for me to feel that and using that, the words to go in there. It feels like light filling up dark space is what it felt like. And a lot of what you're sharing in this process feels like self-healing, that the healing that we can do for ourselves. Yes, therapy is great and being a part of programs like we do and you do are great, but we have a lot more power than we often give ourselves credit for in terms of our own abilities and power to heal ourselves. Can you speak to that a little bit about the power that we have to really change our lives from the inside out?
Absolutely. We each have the power to heal any wounds that we carry in our lives. Because the wounds we carry in our lives as we're healed and transformed make us a better version of ourselves, which then sets us up for the purpose of who we're here to be in the world, for the world and people we're here to affect in a positive way. So really self-healing is just a part of the transformation journey. And we have traditionally grown up in a world where in order to heal, I have to seek out a healer, which really the job of a healer is to guide you on a journey that reminds you of your own power of self. And so when we talk about the breath in and of itself has everything to sustain your life force energy. We all breathe, but we all breathe in an unacknowledged rhythm. And so when you become aware of your breath, just like we all have talents, but it doesn't really change your life until you're aware of those talents, until you nurture those talents. So if you nurture your breath like a talent, you then become someone who goes from being hurt to being healed. And just by moving from hurt to heal, you become known as a healer. So from my perspective, And the work that I do, my job is to activate and help work with people that take them out of victimhood and make them into healers. Now, that doesn't have to be your storefront, that doesn't have to be your career necessarily, but a healer is someone who has healed, just like the butterfly is the one that has survived the chrysalis and come out the other side. And so really and there are all these modalities we talked about. Todd talked about therapy and all these beautiful things that are wonderful. But what these modalities are doing is helping to create enough space for you to build a relationship with breath. And so it's interesting if we talk about breath. There's a couple ways I want to talk about this just to kind of give us a different awareness. So in every time we breathe, we are in some way becoming aware of some of the highest spiritual truths in the universe of any tradition. So when we inhale, that's a birth of the moment. As we exhale, that's the death of the moment. Just like when you start a scene in your life, there's going to be an ending and there's things that happen in between. So the inhale is the birth, the exhale is the death. And when you take birth and death and you mix those words together, you get the word called breath. And so breath helps us realize that everything is starting, everything is finishing. And what happens in between is moving me forward in my journey of transformation. And the more I'm one with my breath, the more I'm aware that my life is a journey of expansion instead of a story of. And so we do all these healing modalities, not always with the awareness. The purpose of these modalities is to bring you back to the breath. So then my invitation with the universe or with my journey was, if it's all preparing you to be with your breath, and not everyone that goes through these modalities is one with their breath, why not just go there first? And so that's why I started this call with us breathing, because self love or self compassion, self acknowledgement is the ability to be aware of yourself, to be aware of your needs and how those needs need to be fulfilled. 9 times out of 10, the needs that need to be fulfilled delivered to the care package at every single breath. And when we breathe deeply, we're able to think deeper, we're able to perceive from a deeper place, and we're able to respond from a depth of wisdom. When we breathe shallowly, we can respond shallowly, we can think shallowly, and we can perceive from a shallow standpoint. So, really, in spirituality or any degree of self help, when we want to go from shallowness to depth, or even perceive more of the depth that appears like shallowness in the world, we deepen our breath and we breathe in and we breathe out. It's a very physical, it's a very fundamental practice because everything can be mentalized. We have this ingenious machine, we have an incredible imagination, and we can all think ourselves into knots in a matter of seconds. And yet, what we need is actually more time to be with ourselves. But most people in this world don't know what that means. They're binging on Netflix. They're doing all these distraction things, which is totally fine. So, what happens when we make time to build a relationship with our breath? And what happens when being with our breath makes us more heart centered, makes us more emotionally intelligent, makes us more empathetic, makes us more compassionate, and makes us more forgiving? And the best quality of is we discover that vulnerability is actually a doorway into a power of resilience that is far more powerful than the thickest wall of pride. And we're living in a world where the world is breaking down any pride wall that exists so we can all remember the power of our vulnerability and live in a world where we can start living and breathing together.
Beautiful. I think one thing I've noticed with clients and myself is we'll be feeling so good. We're doing this healing work, and then something will happen. We
Yes.
get triggered. And that could be then we put a wall up, right? Then we go back to protection, or we're interacting with someone and they have walls up and they have protection. And so just navigating that ebb and flow where we're moving and then something comes up. How does like the rebalancing and also dealing with other people when we're meeting their stuff on our own healing journey.
Well, I think it's like if we were driving a car. And if you're driving a car and the ball lights on your dashboard that says it's time to put gas in your tank, and you say, I see the ball on my dashboard, and you keep going. And if you don't acknowledge the sign it's trying to tell you, you then run out of gas. So, in the same way, when we are tense, when we are defensive, when we put a wall up, it's actually like the gas ball in your car that's lighting up that says you're in a moment that requires more fuel than you have access to. And what helps you go into the gas station and refuel your vehicle is your breath. So I would say, just to connect these 2 points, that when we have walls that come up, we are in the most need of self-compassion. But when your defenses come up, it's really hard to go, I'm mad at that person. Let me love myself. That feels a little, you know, inauthentic. If you were to say to yourself, wow, I'm in a moment that requires more fuel than I have in my car, right? I'm in a moment with someone and we are on a trip, literally. We are on a trip and we have not enough gas in the tank than the journey that we're on. So what if I refill my side of the gas tank? Right? Maybe it's like maybe a conversation is like a car with 2 gas tanks. I'm just going to refuel my side of it, and I'm going to breathe slowly. Now, here's the benefit of breathing: the universe, or the creator, or whatever you want to call this, created listening, so that as you listen to what people are saying, you can breathe as you listen. So one of the beautiful things about a conversation is if you're in a conversation with someone where there's walls and defensiveness, usually defensive people are the ones who demand to be heard. The beauty of that is when you let people be heard, it gives you a chance to breathe. And what I do is I not only hear what people are saying, but I listen to the pace of their breath. And what you'll notice is people will be in a da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and you'll actually listen to the shallowness of their breath. And you'll actually feel how restricted it is. And so if you in that moment, as you're listening, slow your breathing while you're listening, they will begin to slow with you when they choose to. And what that will do is it will deepen their breath, which will awaken them from their shallow perspective. And I've done this many times, and I have people in the middle of on a tirade, making a point, telling me what they think. In the middle, they stop. I had this happen once, and they said, "What are you doing? What do you mean? What are you doing over there?" "Just listening, but you're breathing kind of weird." I said, "Yeah, I breathe slowly because I want to make sure I take in everything you're saying. It's very important to me. I'm breathing slowly." And they said, "Why are you doing that?" "Well, this is how I am. This is how I breathe. Would you like to continue? I'm very interested in what you're having to say." And then what I do is I make sure that as they speak, I'm speaking as slowly as I'm breathing. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating what's called a pattern interrupt. I'm interrupting the pace of their breath. I'm interrupting the shallowness of their perception. And I'm deepening my breath and speaking at a slower pace. And I'm bringing us both into a place we can meet as equals. And I'm making the moment safer for us. Because when people are righteous, they're hiding. And if they're hiding, they're unsafe. When people need to be right, it's because that's where they feel the safest, because maybe someone in their family who ran the house like a dictator was always right. So we don't know what the association is, but we know that trying to get someone to see your point of view is like one of the biggest evil Knievel leaps of faith in existence. Like if someone could see your point of view, you wouldn't be in an argument with them. The reason you're in an argument with them is because they won't see your point of view, because they need to be seen and heard. So we're not trying to do that. We're just going to listen and breathe slowly. We're going to breathe the way they're not breathing, and we're going to listen the way they're not listening. And then we're going to talk slower than they're talking. And we're going to be the difference in the moment, not someone trying to convince someone of a different way to be. We're going to be the change we want to see, as someone very famous once said. And when we do that, we become the healers of the moment, not someone requiring healing from another moment we're in. And it's very powerful. And I can say that I learned to master this with my mother, who was one of my greatest training grounds in existence. I'm sure you've all had master teachers you grew up with. Mine was my mother. And I feel like she helped me be a Navy SEAL at this, because my mother would reinvent history to be right. She would alter the course of history. She would lie about the color of the sky, and no one could disagree with my mom. And I got into arguments where my family are all attorneys, PowerPoint presentations and graphs, and Your Honor, Exhibit A, let me show you why my point of view has validity. My mom ripped me to shreds my entire life, and then turned around and built me up every other day. And this is my upbringing. And so I learned that while she played her patterns, all I could do was breathe. And the more I breathed, the safer I felt in the presence of her patterns. And I would breathe slower than my mom. I would talk slower than my mom. And I would listen deeper than my mom would listen. And in the middle of her biggest tirades, she would stop in the middle of talking and forget what she was saying. I remember once she even said, she's so funny. As an adult, I did this. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm listening." She said, You're quiet." And I said, "Well, if I don't listen quietly, when you're speaking, we're both going to talk, and that's madness. No, who's going to hear it? Anyone. This is what listening sounds like. You're too quiet." And it was hilarious because it was my mom coming out of the shell of her ego without me telling her to come out of her ego, without telling her what to do. You need to be more spiritual. Read this book, right? There was nothing. And I say this because, and this as an aside, one of the biggest things that got in the way of me connecting with my family when I took a spiritual journey was my spirituality, because they thought they had to believe, or they thought they had to be different to connect with me. And they didn't know that I was literally just going into my heart and learning how to be a vulnerable person. And they would be around me feeling judged. And like, I don't want to talk about stuff and be seen a certain way by the spiritual person. And I was the black sheep of my family because I was a spiritual person. And so I actually had to overcome spirituality to connect with my family heart to heart, to where I learned we don't have to talk the same way. We don't have to have the same interests. I'm interested in you. And the only way my family learned how interested I was in them is when I breathed with them. And then they breathed with me. It's very powerful.
And I got to share in this, Matt, because I learned this from you, the pattern interrupt, years back. And it's been an absolute game changer for me. It really, if you're listening to this, what he just said is genuinely a superpower.
Yeah.
Because you're actually causing a beautiful blip in the matrix of a pattern, and you're stopping it. And when that moments where people stop and look at you like, what are you doing? What they were doing before stops.
Yeah.
Right. And then they become curious, and just the conversation stops, and that pattern interrupt enables more space to be held. Right. And a different level of connection than to go in. And it's just a really beautiful practice. And I love your story with your family, and thank you for sharing that. My next question around this process is, and I've had this from my own experience, and I know others feel it too, is when we're really starting to embody these practices and saying, okay, I get it. Like I do need to breathe into the pain. I need to start really feeling where this is and using my breath. Oftentimes things come up, emotional things come up. The emotional part of this that can feel very discomforting. Again, wanting us to run away from it, to numb ourselves or distract ourselves. That seems to be part of the terrain sometimes in this process. I think your superpower is continuing the process with softness and vulnerability and curiosity to get to the point of ultimate vulnerability. But speak to this part of the journey a little bit more, if you can, in terms of meeting those parts of ourselves that really have trouble dealing with the emotions or makes us feel really shut down or fearful. How do we, when we meet those barriers, continue to explore ourselves and heal ourselves from the inside out?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think maybe one of the places we start with is as we see our emotions, the ones the most difficult to process, to face, and to feel, especially the ones that we don't want to feel, the ones we wish weren't there. What if we thought of this as the unfinished business of our past? That there is a certain amount of time that each emotion has to be felt before the memory that is held in your cells clears and heals. And not everyone will sit with their emotions for a certain period of time. So they come back and forth in like an orbiting fashion. And so let's say you're walking back to your car from lunch and you are just bombarded by grief out of nowhere. And then naturally we look around going, God, what's causing this? But the truth is, it's the unfinished business of what is held in the cells of your body. Maybe when you felt grief when you were a child, it got interrupted and suppressed and stuffed inside of you. And you said, I won't feel that right now. But whatever we don't feel right now, we're suggesting that we're going to feel it at a later date. So whatever we didn't feel before, we have to feel at a later date. And the universe is so merciful. It says you don't have the equipment and the mental awareness to feel it right now. So we're going to bring this back when you have more skills and resources, and you're going to face the unfinished business. So I think that the first step in answering this question is noticing that instead of looking at our emotions as symptoms of a problem to fix, how do I make this go away? What do I do? Because you can turn the light off in your dashboard and the bowl doesn't have to light up, but it doesn't mean you have gas in your tank. So when you have unfinished business, no matter what inspires it, whether it's the memory of something, whether it's someone in your life reminds you of a relative from the past. I've had things where I've had a smell remind me of a memory of like my grandmother. And out of nowhere, I'm just in tears processing her passing. So I think one of the things we have to look at is, can we first appreciate that our emotional body is helping not just to navigate our intuition and guide us, but is always showing us the unfinished business. And that in a strange, I know it's probably so funny when I say things like this, hard to appreciate, but you will eventually be able to appreciate and say, I appreciate that the moment of sadness has only come back at the moment I was best equipped to face it. Probably not the most convenient moment in your life, right? You're about to go on a first date, probably not the right moment, but that's when you're best equipped to feel something inside of you. And if we learn to be authentic with our feelings, if we learn to say, I'm going to pause my life right now and for one moment, locate it, breathe into it. What the words this part needs to hear and say it to myself. It probably will take you 10 seconds, no more than 45 seconds of your life. Then you unpause out of that moment and you return with regularly scheduled programming as you were intending to do. And so if we look at, appreciate the fact that what I have not faced in my past, I have flung into the future to find me when I'm more emotionally capable to face this. My emotional body tells me when it's time to face unfinished business. And it's just asking me to stop, breathe into it, and offer itself compassion, literally for 10 seconds to 45 seconds. And I can assure you, and I believe I forgot the study, but it's been scientifically measured, the most emotional upheavals, just the emotion of it, will last no longer than 90 seconds. The reason it lingers longer is because we're extending that shelf life by thinking about it. So if we feel, if we breathe, and apply self compassion like a form of CPR, we then refuel the gas tank, we clear out the cellular body, and then the next moment you enter, you're actually more prepared with more access to your infinite depth than you would have been had you not felt. And so it's a whole different relationship with ourselves. And it's a great way of being in harmony with our feelings instead of perceiving our feelings as emotions that do harm.
Mm. I've really found that for myself whenever I had sadness or fear, it was like, shut it down, right? Resent.
Yeah.
And then now when it comes through, there's appreciation, there's gratitude. Oh, this is up to be cleared, right? It's such a good thing. It's up, it's on the surface, which means I can clear it and move through it. So even just changing our relationship to our emotions, I found is so powerful. And the last question I have is that I think a lot of us can struggle with this idea of worthiness or
Yes.
feeling deserving. So a lot of what you're talking about is nourishment and compassion, and we can kind of get stuck. Well, I don't deserve nourishment. I don't deserve compassion, or I'm not worthy. Period. Or I'm not worthy of love. And like, how do we kind of overcome that hook, that stopping point on this journey?
A great question. Worthiness is when you have exceeded the level of consciousness of the people that hurt you in your life. Unworthiness is when you say, I've been hurt by and this is all subconscious, by the way. I've been hurt by someone, but I'm going to match their level of consciousness as a way of maintaining the connection so that I have the connection the way I thought it was going to be versus what it was. So when we're unworthy, we are refusing to evolve beyond the level of consciousness of our deepest hurts and our most insidious predators. We don't know that consciously, but the subconscious thing, even when a child creates a trauma and says, I must have deserved it, or if I was perfect, this wouldn't have happened, or whatever the justification is. And so they think of the punishment, they think of the trauma as a punishment, and they refuse to evolve past the level of consciousness of someone that hurt them to keep paying back whatever they think the punishment is, as if they did something wrong. So it's really delicate work when we talk about worthiness. But when you are worthy, and worthiness connects really deeply with forgiveness, because forgiveness is a way of saying, I'm not going to forgive as a way of forgetting. It's never what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is, I'm no longer going to use any pain in my life against myself, because the only healing that will free me and will help someone who hurt me never hurt another person again is transcending the level of consciousness of the person. And so worthiness is a sign of how intimately related we are, or how intimate we are in relationship with our breath. The more we breathe, the more we offer self-compassion, the more worthy we become. And what's incredible is that all the loving things that you said to yourself on today's call are either the words that are absent from the heart of someone that hurt you, or the opposite statements of what they say to themselves on a regular basis. And because we are all connected, whether we feel connected to each other or not, what I say to myself in a positive way is healing the wounds that I carry, and is actually helping to heal the wounds that those who have harmed me carry. And not only am I making myself a living example of survival, resilience, and expansion, Also creating in the world a likelihood that less people be harmed, because the change I make in myself is a change I'm making in the world, whether I can see that or not. Very powerful process. So I would say worthiness is when we stop taking our pain out on ourselves, and that we shift from earning approval to feeding ourselves with the nourishment and approval that no one else can offer us. Worthiness is when we have access to our infinite depth. And worthiness is when I say, yes, I was hurt, but my past doesn't define me. It's just helping me to step into my potential. And as I heal myself, as I breathe deeply, especially knowing that most traumas occur in a gasp. And it's when someone takes your power away. And the power they take from you is your breath. So when you breathe, you are the one that gives you your power back. It's like you're stepping into the past, like a vision quest, finding you in that moment, pausing it, taking you out of that scene and bringing you back to the present. It's literally like a scene from Back to the Future. So when you breathe, you give yourself your power back. And when you breathe, you break all agreements to stay at the same consciousness as people that have hurt you, neglected you, or abandoned you. And energetically, you send blessings to uplift their circumstances so that no one else can be harmed by the pain that they carry. So this is not just the power to heal yourself, but the power that is supporting the transformation of our entire planet. And you won't see it in the beginning. You'll just feel it in you, that you are the first person being transformed by the power of your breath. And as you are transformed, there's nothing left for the breath to transform, so it has to move outside of you. And that's what happened for me. The breath had nothing else to heal inside of me, so it moved outside of me and began transforming millions of people that I have had the honor over 18 years to connect. And as far reaching as my teachings have gone, it's just showing me how far my breath has gone. And for you, you're beginning the journey of healing yourself. And you're beginning the journey of learning to resonate with worthiness and no longer taking your past out on yourself. And learning to truly be the compassion, the mercy, the self-acknowledgement that our world is missing. There's a lot to this.
There is, and you can get the moment of the depth that Matt has gone to within himself, right? And the courage to do this kind of work, so much internal work that then boils up and goes out into the world. And we're at time, but I just want to close out by saying a couple of things. And for those of you on the live call, if you have a question for Matt, you can probably stick around for a little bit, maybe question, but we'll see how that goes. What I feel from you, Matt, is hope, right? And the hope that I'm hearing from the message today is that we have a lot more power to change our own trajectory than we give ourselves credit for, right? And we often hear about the breath, and a lot of people will even roll their eyes. Okay, I get it. I got to breathe. But the big reframe today for me, like just how much impact we can have on ourselves through conscious, intentional breathing and conscious, intentional self-talk. That you transmitted it to us today on the call, that really, I felt it in my body, and I have the power to do that all the time. And that's really what I want, is to be able to release myself from whatever ubiquitous anxiety and stress I'm constantly feeling through these tools. So I just want to honor that this is what you're doing in the world, and that you're having so much impact out there with your books and your documentary. And by the way, we'll share in the show notes and with our list as well, the documentary that Matt did. You should watch how he heals people when he's one-on-one with them. It's extraordinary. Like the shifts that happen. It's truly like Yoda-like. What goes on is unbelievable. I've had the pleasure of seeing that firsthand and being around you, but I just want to thank you for taking this time and sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. And I think we're untapping a lot here in this conversation. So just thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a true honor to be here again. If there's any questions, I love questions. There's nothing off limits. I would love any opportunity to clarify any of this for you so you can walk away feeling as clear as possible or any question, really. Um, and I think that, just if there's any questions to be asked, I just want to say, I think that the power of what we're talking about today really boils down to something very fundamental that sometimes goes unspoken. And that is, in every person's life, there is something they want a lot of, and there's something they want a little. They think they have a lot of fear. They feel like they have a little hope. They feel like they have a lot of money. They feel like, whatever the association is. And I think what we're learning today, even though we haven't spoken about this, is that, and even in my field, even spirituality, a lot of the tendency is, I'm going to do this work so I can get beyond. And I think the real maturity here with breath is that it really isn't a matter of what I'm feeling or not. It's my relationship with things. And we all have grown up knowing our relationship to preference. But in spirituality or in the personal development field, it's really about, can I build a relationship? Can I give value? And can I see a deeper meaning even to the things I don't want to feel? So can I build a relationship of love with all of my experiences? And can I see how much more access it gives me to the infinite depth within? Can I see everything is actually supporting that life is always conspiring for my highest destiny? Even when I think I'm making mistakes, I'm actually just doing something more right than been briefed on. And that life in and of itself is helping us to overcome our fear of the unknown, our fear of what we think is possible. And ultimately, the biggest one of all that most people don't talk about, your fear of yourself. And that's why most people have very painful relationships or avoiding relationships with their feelings because they're afraid of themselves. They're afraid of what's within them, and they want to stay on one side and not explore the other side. And so the power of your breath and what we talked about today is helping you overcome a very unspoken fear of ourselves and allowing us to really see that no matter how I feel and what I think, there's always a message in it. There's always a way for me to understand it. And if I just give myself what I need, how inconvenient it seems, I'm going to step into a brighter and broader expression of my true potential.